If you've saved 2 million or more for retirement, you've probably heard some version of the saying, keep that number to yourself. And if you're like most people, you'd think the reason is pretty straightforward. If friends or family find out how much you have, they'll start asking for money. And while that's true, it does happen, but that's not actually the expensive part. The expensive part, and what I've seen dismantle retirement plans for people who did everything right for 30 plus years, is what that disclosure does to you. Not to your bank account, but to your decisions. It's about how you invest, how you spend, and honestly, how long you may keep working. My name is Taylor DeMars, third generation retirement planner and tax strategist. And today, I'm going to walk you through the 4 things that actually happen when someone at your savings level lets the number out. By the end, I'll hand you the exact words for both sides of this conversation. What to say before anyone even asks, and what to say if the cat's already out of the bag. The whole reason I'm making this video is because 3 of the 4 of these have nothing to do with someone asking you for a dime. Now, most people tell themselves, if someone asks how much I have saved, I'll just say no. I'm good at saying no. And I believe you, but the first cost of letting your number out actually comes before anyone even asks for anything. Nobody calls yet, nobody asks for a loan, but your plan might change anyway. Let me show you what that looks like because I go through balance sheets like this almost every week. Recently, it was a couple I'll call June and Alan. She's 61, retired last spring from sales and pharmaceutical industry. He's 63 and still working as an engineer at a manufacturing company. Between them, they have about $3.5 million saved. And the first thing that stuck out to me on their balance sheet was the cash. A little over $310,000 sitting in a basic savings account earning next to nothing. Their annual spending was around 130 grand a year, so that's close to 2.5 years worth of living expenses just parked at the bank. When I asked Alan about it, he wasn't even mentioning having emergency funds. Instead, what came up was that June's younger sister went through a divorce last year. And their mom has already fallen once already, and no one knows what long-term care might look like if it happens again. So they're paranoid about keeping the money ready, not if, but when someone might need it. And notice he's planning all of this before anyone even asks for help. Because 2 years ago at a family dinner, June mentioned to her sister that they were in good shape, and she shared a rough number of what that meant. But from that point forward, without a single request from anyone, June and Alan started building their retirement around the assumption that they might have to catch somebody. That $310,000 was becoming a family reserve that no one ever discussed as a specific strategy or agreed to out loud, but it came at the cost of everything that money could have been doing for them. And the cash was just the visual piece. June was even resisting doing Roth conversions because she knew that meant paying additional taxes now and wanted to keep that liquidity on hand just in case. Not for her own plan, but for people who didn't ask specifically to be in it. Here's the disconnect between what you might see and everyone else. When June's sister hears, oh, I've got $3.5 million, she pictures a barn full of golden eggs and a pile that you can just spend at will. But you already know the money isn't in the eggs, it's the goose. It has one job: keep laying every month for 30 plus years. And June and Alan don't get to live on the goose, they just get what it lays. One client of mine said it better than I could have, which was, I used to fund my portfolio with my paycheck, and today my portfolio needs to become my paycheck. And that's the mismatch that makes this disclosure so expensive. From the outside, people see what you have, and from the inside, you see what it has to do. And notice no one in this story is the villain. Her sister and family isn't circling. They just see a number and assume it might be available. Now, I want to be fair to the other side of this because many of my clients want to fund big family goals on purpose, thinking weddings for their daughters or chipping in on a child's home down payment. But each of their goals has a specific dollar amount, a rough start date, and it's all decided in advance. That's what we would say is generosity built into the plan. What June and Alan were doing is different. They were just reserving capacity for something undefined, open for people that didn't even know they were holding it on hand. And that's the first thing disclosure does at this level. It doesn't even take the money out of your plan yet, but it just bends the plan towards people who aren't in it. Now, real quick before this second reason, if you're not 100% confident your plan would still work if you stop working tomorrow, I've made you a sample retirement readiness roadmap, and it's linked in the description of the video. It's the exact 7-session process we use with clients mapped onto a fictional couple, and with about 10 minutes, it will usually surface your questions that your current plan hasn't answered. Now, that bend that your plan might be making to others is structural, and most of it is invisible. Now, this second disclosure hits on a much more personal level. Now, while the first reason not to disclose hits your plan from a structural level, this next reason hits you close to home on a personal level. Because most people at your savings level already carry some version of spending caution. You might even second guess a purchase that you can clearly afford. You might feel a little bit of a gut wrench After a nice dinner, even though numbers say you could spend twice as much. I hear from clients all the time something to the tune of they don't consider themselves spendy people. But when you disclose your net worth to someone else, it adds a second layer and it's harder to shake because it's not about whether you can afford something, it's about who's now watching you and whether they think you can afford it. The number stops being a fact and starts being an audience, one that takes a seat inside your own decision making. When someone inside your circle has a general sense of your number, the question can change from, does this make sense for us to purchase? And instead it becomes, what does this look like to someone who knows what we have? And that filter extends to purchases beyond the big ticket ones, like a home or car or vacation. It'll apply to the small things like what lands in your grocery cart and what you buy when your in laws are coming in for the weekend, because you don't want the good stuff sitting on the counter making a statement. It might show up on how long the contractor's truck sits in your driveway because the neighbors talk to your cousin and your cousin knows. It shows up in the trip photo that you loved on the beach, but you didn't want to post because someone who's following you has a rough idea of your accounts and you don't want the picture doing math in their head. Although none of these decisions moves the needle against a $3 million portfolio, it becomes exhausting because underneath each one, you're not just deciding how to spend your money anymore. It feels like you're performing the decision for an audience you never sold tickets to, and the expectations can creep in quietly around you as well. Maybe it's the family trip you're suddenly expected to join in every year, and you're only going because somebody knows your number. But in reality, how much would you have enjoyed that experience anyway? And if you're already careful with your money, this new audience doesn't loosen up, it might actually lock you down. One client asked me in these exact words to know, do we have permission to spend our own money? And unfortunately, you can't take back what someone already knows. I should zoom out and highlight one thing. Keeping a number out of a friendship isn't a form of distrust, but some information can put a weight on a relationship that the other party never asked to carry. The experiences at the dinners, the trips, the easy back and forth you've had with someone for maybe decades, part of protecting all of that is not sharing information that might taint how you view each other. And if it were just about how you would spend, you could probably work through it. But this third reason is why disclosure affects something that takes much longer to repair. Most financial advice treats a couple as a unit, but a couple is in reality two people with two families. And in my experience, the decision about who hears what rarely gets made together. Because what usually happens is one spouse mentions something to their own parent or sibling that feels natural. Say it's at Thanksgiving, and someone asks a harmless question about how things are going. And then before you know it, the answer is out before anyone thinks about it. Something to the tune of, we've been fortunate. He's retiring early next year. In fact, we're in a really great spot. And to the spouse who said it, that feels like you're giving warm reassurance to a family member. But to the other spouse who hears about it on the drive home, it lands like a boundary crossed without being on the same page first. And if you're the one who said it, you didn't do anything wrong by answering your family honestly in the moment, because sharing good news feels good, and it should. The trouble is that hit of dopamine, that good feeling, lasts about a minute, but the information outlives it. And what's left across the table wasn't always the pride that you were hoping to hear from the other person. It may even be a quiet resentment that you never saw coming. It can even cause a slow recalibration of every family and money decision from that point forward. Because when that side of the family needs help with something, the question is no longer just, should we help? But instead, would this even be coming up if they didn't know what we have? Because when one spouse wants to host the holidays and cover all the expenses, the other one isn't just weighing the cost. They're weighing whether this is a one-time gift or the start of an expectation that only exists because the cat got out of the bag. And the reason this stays alive for years is that both people are usually right. One of them is right because they can afford to be generous, and that these are siblings, not strangers. But the other spouse is right that commitments are like entering the plan through a door that got opened without a joint discussion. So the fight was never really about money. It's about the fact that one person let the information out and both people have to live with what happens next. Unfortunately, disclosure doesn't come with an undo button, even when the decision to disclose was never mutual, which is why I would put this conversation on the calendar before either one of you retires. Answering together, who should know what? How the two of you should handle a financial favor or money requests together before there's even one on the table. Having that conversation before the information out is a planning meeting. Having it after is a repair job. To help you out, I'll give some examples of what to say when you're asked in just a moment. Before we get there, if these first three reasons felt uncomfortably familiar and you're realizing how much of your plan is already bent around other people's needs, You'll get clarity on how to set up your own spending goals by grabbing that sample retirement plan in the description. A quick read through with your spouse will show you page by page what it looks like when family commitments get written into a plan instead of leaking through via pressure. Now, all three of these reasons would be enough to keep your number private, but the fourth consequence is, I think, the one that costs the most because it never shows up on a balance sheet. Because if you lean towards working longer than you probably have to, I have to ask, is it partly about what you decided you owe other people? Because the last thing a known number does is hand you obligations you never agreed to. And the proof starts with the version you did agree to. You're often called part of the sandwich generation, smushed between your parents' needs and your kids' needs at the same time. I have multiple clients who are working past the point their plan needs them to because somewhere along the way they promised to help someone that doesn't even know that they did. Usually it's making sure that your kids don't graduate college with debt. First undergrad, then master's, maybe another year or two. Nobody demanded it, but even after the fact, some of these parents admit to me that they resented the wait a little. Not just the money, but the time that it cost them. Now, it's not my place to say what people should or shouldn't spend on. Plenty of people would say helping their kids graduate debt free is a wild success. And I'm not arguing with a parent about what their money is for. I bring that example up because that promise was a chosen one, yet it still moved retirement dates back by years. Now, here's where your number comes in. The day somebody learns that what you have, something might shift in your own head. You may start to plan as though your phone could ring first if anything goes wrong for anyone who knows. Not because they're scheming behind your back, but you're the one that could help them. And whether or not that call ever comes, planning on it works on your plan exactly like the college promise works on many parents. An obligation nobody ever says out loud quietly adds to your definition of enough. Except the college version of a number has a graduation date. This one has neither. Your own number does have a ceiling you can put a number on. What everyone else might someday would need has no ceiling at all. So the target naturally moves. It comes in the form of waiting for another bonus cycle, a vesting date, a feeling that one more year of compounding would make everything sturdier. And these reasons at face value feel irrational, but underneath them sits a weight that wasn't there before somebody learned what you built. A target that moves every time you get close to it doesn't become a target anymore. It's more of an endless horizon. And you can walk towards it for the rest of your working life. Your plan may already be funded, so the real cost is those windows. Every year you sit in a high tax bracket instead of using a cheap conversion year right after retirement, and those years don't wait. And past the tax math, your spouse might stop bringing up the trips that she had researched. Your kids get a year closer to the age when a Tuesday afternoon with you stops being cool. A client even told me once from 55 to 65, they felt they would never be more healthy than they were at that moment. Unfortunately, that tends to be the case. That window closes every year, whether their portfolio grows or not. Now, disclosing your number to others doesn't invent another year, it hands them ammunition. One more reason to delay that might feel responsible, feels generous, and spend something you can't buy back. Now, let me play devil's advocate here for a moment and push back on my own premise. This whole video, I've been telling you to keep your numbers quiet. And that's still the default, but the default doesn't mean it's a commandment. I've watched parents genuinely be transparent with their kids about money, not as a flex, but for education purposes. And those kids came out better prepared than their parents ever were. The key ingredient is transparency is a joint decision. The spouses decided together what to share, why, and with whom. And then frankly, it doesn't mean you have to share actual numbers. Discretion can be the default. Disclosure is the decision. What you never want is an unintentional leak. Just a number that slips out at a birthday dinner and starts making decisions for you. A couple I'll call Todd and Renee got this really well. An inheritance came their way a few years ago, and a significant piece of that was set aside for their daughters, who were 15 and 17 years old. The girls naturally were getting to have questions around affording college, housing, etc. And Todd and Renee had decided together to simply tell them that there was enough for college, perhaps grad school, and even for a real start on life. And it was ambiguous, but that was on purpose, because now their daughters know exactly what matters, not a specific number to start pre-spending. They're aiming to teach their kids to see the eggs without showing the goose. So here's the practical side, because keep it quiet is easy to say until your father-in-law asks at a holiday table how the retirement accounts are looking. There are 3 conversations I'd outline, and here's what I'll suggest you say in each one. The first is when you're directly asked the question. It may come across casual like, okay, you're retiring now. Are you going to be okay? Or something more pointed like, how much do you have saved for retirement? One sentence can easily cover both. something to the tune of, we're working with a planner, and they say we're in a good spot. It can communicate that you're stable without attaching a number to it, and it puts a professional, some might call a scapegoat, between you and the question because most people won't push past somebody that has it handled. And if they do push, you don't have to explain. I like to bounce back to humor and joke about it. Now, as well as coming up with a couple ideas, I couldn't settle on just one. So I'm going to give you a few, and whatever feels most natural to you, you can use. You might answer their interrogating question saying something like, why? Are you writing a book about us? Or asking, are you asking as a family member or from a secret agent as the IRS? Or a simple 2-word version just saying, you first, and smile and wait for them to respond, and then change the subject. A joke marks the boundary without raising the temperature of the conversation, and nobody wants to be the one who pushes past a laugh. The second conversation I'd suggest matters even more, and it's with your own spouse. Before the holidays, before the reunion, there are 3 things to agree on. 1, what's off limits? You may say no balances, no dollar amounts, no we could retire tomorrow comments. Even saying we've been fortunate paints a picture for someone to think about. 2, think about the sentence you'll both use. If one of you says we're fine and the other one says, oh, we've saved a lot, those answers build 2 different stories inside the same family. And the third thing to align on is what happens if someone actually asks for money or a favor. Decide now to answer with some version of, we don't make money decisions on the spot, so let me talk it over at home and I'll get back to you. And behind closed doors, the question can become, all right, is this in the plan? If it does go in, does something quietly have to come out to make room? And if so, are you okay with that trade-off? Some of my clients like to put generosity into the plan on purpose, but it's just decided in advance every January instead of under pressure around Christmas. That's the difference between generosity you choose and generosity that chose you. And if the request is big enough that yes would strain things for you, an honest answer is also the kindest one, saying something to the tune of, everything we have is the paycheck we're going to live on for the next 30 years. We start handing pieces of it away, the people who might need help down the road are us. And we never want to put that burden on you. Now, this third conversation is for those of you thinking, it's too late. The number's already out. Your job is now to redirect, which is easier than you think. You can now answer money questions saying something like, most of our savings are in retirement accounts, and large withdrawals can create some significant tax consequences. And for almost anyone with a large pre-tax balance, that's simply the case. You can follow up with saying, we're on a budget now. We're paying ourselves a set monthly amount from the portfolio. We got to treat it like our paycheck. That framing doesn't make you sound poor, but it moves the conversation off of what you have and how you're going to live. We're not trying to have you lie to anyone. It's just closing the tap of information on something that isn't anybody else's business. You don't need that kind of pressure on your plan, your spending, your marriage, or your retirement timeline. At your level of wealth, financial privacy is not about keeping secrets from people you love, because those people will see your savings as golden eggs, yet your job is to protect the goose. So your decisions can come from your plan instead of guilt or pressure. And those people can stay in your life because of who you are, not what you have. The retirees I watch make this money last for 30 years are the quiet ones. They treat it like what it is, finite and already working. Now, those are the 4 things that can happen to your plan when the people around you know your number. If you want to pressure test your own plan after this, that sample retirement readiness roadmap is linked in the description. It shows you exactly how we build a plan to protect the goose, not just the eggs, so you can see where your own setup might be overexposed. And this video right here walks you through the 5 tests to see where a retirement plan like yours might quietly fail you 10 years from now. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you in that video.